All right, welcome in. It is Wednesday. It's day 3 of Feast Week. Two-man show again today. Brian Power is back. Vina will be back later in the week, I think. And I got to say, when you're betting these, it's Feast Week if you're watching. When you're betting them, it can be Feast or Famine Week. That's what's happened to me so far. I had a 5-1 day on Monday and followed it up with a 1-5 Tuesday. Brian, for my mental health, it would have been just better to go 3-3 both days, but here we are, these swings of like volume betting during the college basketball season on display for me this week. How was did you end up at the zoo at any point in time the last couple of days?
Yeah, I did end up at the zoo Monday, and I'll tell you what, I felt like I was at the zoo on Monday, both work and literally. Thanks for, by the way, carrying the load for the show yesterday. I needed, I was traveling, guys, full disclosure, on Tuesday back from Cincinnati. I'm back home, as you can see, no longer in the basement like I was on Monday. Very glad to be back home. I'll be blunt with you. I wasn't very good on Monday's show. I thought, I spoke well. I gave a lot of information, but I think as far as my opinions on a lot of those games, I didn't say a lot of correct things on Monday. So I apologize for that. Hopefully we, after a day to dust myself off and collect, I'm a little more correct here today. I was glad to see you did well on Monday at least. But yeah, this is a crazy week with all these teams playing 3 games in 3 days, teams not knowing who they're even going to play today. I mean, this Iowa State-Syracuse game is insane, Trigg, in that they have what? The game tips off at 1 o'clock, correct? Where am I at here on my sheet? It tips off at 1 o'clock. They have 15 hours of lead time to know what the matchup was there, I believe. I don't think they learned till shortly after 10 a.m.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, listen, let's, we were going to talk Gonzaga and Michigan, but since you've brought it up, let's just get the ball rolling.
Let's talk about that game. Oh, okay.
Let's just talk Iowa State, Syracuse. And I think it kind of illustrates the point that we'll probably make with some of the bigger games. It's like, from a handicapping perspective, you're in such uncharted territory with some of these third game in 3 day type scenarios, right? Where it's like, when you look at the college basketball season, like in really, this only happens during conference tournament play. There's no other time. Every once in a while, you'll play back to back. In the NCAA tournament, you'll play. It's not uncommon to play like a
twice
Thursday,
in 3
Saturday. Twice in 3 days. Some leagues play like that, but 3 games in 3 days really only happens now or conference tournament. And now you talk about the wrinkle of the players era, having really not knowing your opponent potentially until later that night. I mean, it's very conference tournament-esque, except usually in the conference tournament, you at least, by that point, the game is at night. It's not like first thing in the morning, which is, I think, out there because they're a couple hours behind us. So this is going to be an early tip local time. And both teams are probably they are without their best players. So yeah, how do you make sense of Iowa State, Syracuse? I'll go to you, and then I've got some thoughts, but I'm curious to see how you see this one.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting matchup. Look, I know that on social media over the last 48 hours in the college basketball world, there's been so much hand-wringing, so much talk about just the nature of this tournament, correct? And that's not for you and I to decide like that, right? I mean, look, there's games. We're going to bet on them regardless, okay? I think there's, it's kind of a soulless event, I think is kind of the consensus. But, hey, we're getting some good matchups, at least. I think what's interesting about this game, Trigg, between Syracuse and Iowa State, it's not just that these teams have such little lead time. You brought up how in conference tournaments, the way the brackets are done in conference tournaments, let's say it's the quarterfinal, like we're talking a quarterfinals to semifinals situation, okay, in a 24-hour span of the conference. The 2 teams that win the third and fourth quarterfinal will then play the second semifinal, and you at least have an idea who you're going to play, right? Because the 2 teams in the opposite part of the bracket, and there's 24 hours at least to get ready. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this where it's like you're playing tomorrow 15 hours from now, and you don't know against who. And it's going to be against, a decent team. So it's crazy. What else is crazy? Iowa State is the 1-2-0 team in this, the one team that's gone 2-0 in this event, I should say, that will not get to compete for the extra NIL money, which is obviously the draw for most of these teams. I know Otzenberger's saying, "Oh, this was more about character building." That's what you say when you missed out on the NIL money. But I think on the bracket, this was more. And he didn't want to run up the. To be fair, they cost themselves by not running up the score last night. Literally, and Kansas dunked it late to get into that third place game. So we're talking a lot of logistics here about the matchup. What you guys need to know: Iowa State's 2-0 in this event. Syracuse 0-2. They played Houston and Kansas, and they competed hard. Why did they lose those games, Trigg? I know you know why. Let's just make sure everyone else knows why. This is a team that went 12 of 29 from the free throw line against Houston. I know a lot of people like bang their head against the wall. Oh, this free throw. You can't go 12 of 29. Sometimes, I think the free throw shooting, people make too much of that, but 12 of 29 from the charity stripe is absolutely abhorrent. And then they're 13 of 23 against Kansas. So that's 25 of 52 on free throws. Not good.
Yeah,
and it may just be a thing. It may just be a thing. With that, I mean, there's certain teams that just suck from the free throw line. So that's a problem. I don't know. That's a lot. We've said a lot here for a game that's really hard to bet. There's no prep time, and it's early in the year. It's not like you got a lot of tape on these teams either.
Yeah. So also just to your point about the conference tournaments and stuff like that, you've played those teams during the regular season in most cases. So it's like you've probably already prepped at once for the team you're going to play in a conference tournament. Whereas having really no idea who your opponent's going to be because it's based on, results from a couple of days. And then it's based on whoever they hand you because there's no bracket. Yeah, it's going to make it. But the thing is, and this is where I'll tie it back into what I think is maybe something actionable in this one. It's the same for both teams. I saw someone in the chat say, well, coaching's going to really matter. Yeah, Iowa State's got a pretty big coaching edge. Red Autry's one of the worst coaches in the land. And this goes back to something I said on Monday. I don't mind that as much when you're a 10-point dog. And so now I pulled up a comment. Doug M. Iowa State owned Creighton inside the paint. They will have a much tougher time for Syracuse interior defense. That's a very good point. Syracuse's interior defense has looked great. Also, yesterday, Brian, I knew I was doomed to have a bad day when I had Creighton plus 9.5 and it went off 4.5 and I had no chance. I had some good insight into Lipsy for Iowa State not playing. I think I put that in as a 4% play at about midnight or maybe right around then. I was still up watching Maryland. It was 1 a.m. That went off 4.5. So I'm sitting there with a huge CLV and it never mattered. And so that kind of set the tone for me giving back my Monday yesterday. Reason I bring that up here is I do think so without Lipsy, even though it didn't matter against Creighton, that backcourt is very young without him. And I have to say, I've been very impressed with Syracuse's defense. And so maybe it matters a little bit here if Cuse can force a couple turnovers. If Kyle on the interior for Syracuse is the guy that came over from UCLA has been fantastic. So I do have a lean towards Syracuse at 10. But man, it's tough because it goes both ways. Donnie Freeman didn't play in this tournament. And then you just have to wonder, how much do they have left in the tank? The all-in effort against Houston, putting the effort in to come back against Kansas, and then running out of gas. How much do they have in the tank for this early tip? I think that's what's going to ultimately keep me off of this game.
Yeah. And I think it's fair. Is the Syracuse 2-point defense so far, is that a mirage? Is that something we expect? It's obviously, we're early in the season. A lot of these numbers are small sample sizes. Some of these teams have played bad weak opponents. I think that's why I'm not convinced Syracuse is going to be a great 2-point defense the rest of the year.
I will.
And also, by the way, Creighton, my God. My apologies. I know you had him and it was injury related.
Awesome.
Creighton's in some trouble this year. This is the worst Creighton team in years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They had, they had nothing. That team is. I did downgrade them significantly after that performance yesterday. And then just to, so I guess this will end up being our feature game today since we got into it. We might as well put a bow on it. You talked about Syracuse's interior defense. I do think it's probably going to be considerably better than last year just because you take Eddie Lampkin off the floor, who is not a good defensive player at all, and you put William Kyle in, who is an absolute beast on the defensive end. But the other thing is they're playing entirely man-to-man now. So that was one thing that Autry talked about when he took the Syracuse job was he wanted to phase out the zone. He wanted to get away from the 2-3 zone. Now, in the first year, he tried to do that, and the defense was atrocious. It was a mess, so he had to go back to it a little bit. Last year, I just don't think he had the personnel. This year, it looks like he's got the personnel to play man-to-man. And so I do think the Cuse defense might be like a lot better than people think. Again, I'll lean towards Syracuse at 10. I just saw a 10.5 pop up at BetMGM. But, man, Iowa State, like, they looked really good yesterday without Lipsy. Could it happen again today? That's probably why I won't bet the game.
1.2 points per possession for Iowa State yesterday. So that's very good.
I'm going to go to you for what was going to be our feature game. I suppose we'll make it a little double feature, and then we'll start rattling off chat questions. But from just a sheer game standpoint, Gonzaga, Michigan might be. I mean, might be not only the best game today, this could be the game of the non-conference. I mean, so far, this might be the best matchup of the season to this point. I was surprised, Brian, when my numbers came out Michigan ever so slightly favored in this game. I made them -1. Do you agree or disagree? And how are you looking at this game?
I agree with the market. Spoiler alert. I agree with where the market is at right now, pretty much. Let's go through it here. Earlier this week, we talked about point differential being a key factor in determining the winner for this somewhat soulless Players Era event out in Vegas. Well, Trigg, needless to say, Michigan and Gonzaga have definitely produced some impressive point differentials to qualify for tonight's championship game. For those just kind of keeping up here, Michigan's beaten San Diego State and Auburn by a combined 70 points. Gonzaga beats Alabama and Maryland by a combined 49. Power ratings wise, I've moved Michigan up a couple. Obviously, you have to a few spots after the last 2 days. Gonzaga, meanwhile, they're number 1 in my power ratings. I moved them just past Duke. I'm pretty much in line, like I said, with where the market currently is at. I made the Zags -2, so we're off a little bit, you and I. Now, that doesn't mean Michigan can't win here. I'm not going to say that. The Wolverines, you're talking about a team with 4 double-digit scores for the season. 6 guys were in double figures last night. This team seems confident. They're talking about how they feel they have the best front court in the country. Defensively, though, Trigg, is where Michigan has really shined this far. Number 1 in adjusted efficiency over Ken Baum on that end of the floor. They're holding opponents to just 34.5% shooting overall. Number 2 nationally in 2-point field goal percentage allowed. Now, of course, it remains to be seen if they can hold this Gonzaga team in check. Zags have already exceeded 95 times this year. Last night, they hit 100 for the second time. Of course, Michigan has now scored 100 plus twice as well, including last night. I do think Gonzaga has the length to combat the Michigan front court. I mentioned Michigan's 2-point defense a minute ago. Well, Gonzaga, they're shooting 62% on 2-point attempts. So that's going to be a key part of this game. But I think the real key, Trigg, will be Gonzaga's 3-point shooting. They've not been great from distance so far, below 35% from behind the arc. For them to win this game, I think Gonzaga needs to hit threes. I have said a lot here again for a game where I'm not yet ready to commit to a side or total, but I will say 160, which was where the total opened, seemed low for a game where you got 2 teams that have both scored 94 each of the last 2 days, both hit 100 last night. I think the question we need to ask, and this goes back to the discussion about the entire Players Era event, what might these teams have left in the tank playing a third game in 3 days, especially because it's the third game in 3 days against high-level competition?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go at it from that angle, I think you give the edge there to Michigan ever so slightly because, I mean, that was the Gonzaga-Bama game was a war. It's just Gonzaga landed the knockout blow at the end. Michigan won by 40 against San Diego State, which is not – San Diego State right now is not a grueling opponent. Like that would almost be from like a pace standpoint, and then the fact that you're up 40 probably had like took very little out of Michigan. And then, you know, of course, last night they end up big by the half. So it's like, you know, now I understand that Gonzaga won big last night as well, but still, like again, that's so difficult for me to look at that and say, like, let me bet. Like, it's not enough for me to like want to bet on it. The other thing I'll say, just personally, I'm getting away for after yesterday. Like, so I got burned a little bit yesterday on like, okay, well, I make this team -1. They're now a 2.5 point underdog. And I bet a couple of those yesterday. Bradley, South Dakota State, Utah Tech, right? Where it was like, well, they're +1.5, +2. I make them like -3. And I think I'm going to, I think for me, especially, maybe I'm just a little bit gun shy after what happened yesterday, but like, I see Gonzaga going to 2.5 places right now. If I was like red hot, I might feel inclined to be like, well, I make Michigan a slight favorite. Let me grab that possession with the Wolverines. I'm less inclined to do it right now. And again, we're really splitting hairs, in my opinion, trying to like figure out which of these two very, very elite teams is going to like push the right buttons to win this game. So when there's so many other games on the menu, like this is just not one that I put a ton of time into like trying to find the winner, because I think I think you can make a case for both sides at this point. There's a handicap for Michigan and there's a handicap for Gonzaga. Obviously, whoever executes better is going to win. I don't know that anyone truly knows. Truly feels like you're flipping a coin.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that I just obviously kind of want to watch and just enjoy. Hope it's a good game. You know, I mean, there's also a situation that if one team's just having a bad night, it might get away from them too. You know what I'm saying? It's not the end of the world. You know, I mean, Michigan, Gonzaga, I mean, it's not the end of the world if you lose this game here the night before Thanksgiving. It just isn't. Although I guess there's a lot of NIL money that says otherwise, but if the teams are into that. Michigan's not hurting for NIL money, though.
All right, comments, light up the chat. We've got over 40 minutes left. And honestly, these are the types of games today that I'm going to have more opinions on. Like, you know, just the games that it's a normal game, okay? Columbia going to Fairfield, normal non-conference game. It's not the third game in 3 days. It's not like some crazy, like, MTE in Cancun. It's just a normal campus game. I was hoping to talk Rob Vino into going into this game tonight just because I want him to see Mahoney Arena up close and personal. Phenomenal building on the campus of Fairfield. I think it's 3 years old at this point. I got to go to one of the first games there. Tremendous facility. They will host Columbia tonight. Garth, first of all, appreciate the donation.
Thank you, Garth.
And thank you, Garth. And we'll get to your game here. So Columbia Fairfield. I watched Fairfield play Lemoyne, not in person. I was going to try to swing by that game this weekend. Did not get a chance to get over there. But Fairfield ran them out of their own gym. It was a pretty solid performance start to finish for Fairfield. I think this is a much tougher task. Now, to specifically talk to your question, you said your numbers are lining up to take Columbia -2.5 tonight. My number is pretty much right on that. I've got Columbia -2.5 in this game. And I think had I not watched Fairfield's last couple games, I might have been like more on in step with you saying, yeah, like Columbia less than a possession is just the right side from like where I had these teams rated and sort of like what I've seen to this point. But for me, Fairfield's looked impressive in their last couple games. And I'm less inclined to fade them at home where I think they're going to kind of get an okay turnout of like locals tonight. Like I feel like that building is getting a good local turnout right now. So I'm right on the number. I wish I had something more to lean you one way or the other, but I feel like Fairfield might be a little bit better than the market, and I don't want to go against them. So good luck if you go with Columbia. I don't think I'll be involved in this game because I really do think Fairfield might be just a touch better than they're getting credit for at the moment. BP, what anything for you on that game? Do you make a number for those games? Do you have just like some sort of reference point for them?
So I just double checked, and I'm pretty much right on Margaret. I'll say that the one thing that sticks out, or there's a couple things that stick out here when you look at this matchup. Columbia's having a tough time taking my trepidation with betting Columbia in this game. They're not taking care of the basketball very well. Fairfield, they do take care of the basketball. When you look at the Fairfield side, they haven't shot well from three. I talk about this all the time. Okay, well, will this, does this number improve? You kind of look, I mean, it's early, obviously. I think when you see really bad 3-point shooting from a team, generally speaking, that's probably going to regress a little bit to the mean. When you see extraordinary 3-point shooting early in the year, that's going to, regress to the mean the other way. And Fairfield's 3-point shooting hasn't been that good. So I don't know. I'm not going to bet this one because I do have some trepidation, A, about the Columbia turnovers, and B, if Fairfield knocks down their threes here, and they are in their home gym, then I don't know. I think Fairfield might actually be live to possibly pull the outright upset. It would be a minor upset, obviously.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll throw out, like Fairfield's 4-2. Their two losses are at Penn State, at Seton Hall. Both games they played very, very good for at least a half. I think they led Penn State by like 8, like in the second half of that game, ended up losing. I know that one of the halves of that Seton Hall game was very impressive for Fairfield, and they're 4-0 against teams just like Columbia. So that's the other thing. Like they're beating teams in this, what I'll call, for lack of a better term, weight class. NJIT, they won by 21. They knocked off Stonehill by 2, knocked off Loyola, Maryland by 3, and then they beat Lemoyne. Those are all kind of teams that are in the same like weight class as Columbia. So they've done well against this type of opposition. I'm kind of with you, Brian. I almost think I'd rather take the bucket at home with Fairfield, take the 2.5. But again, I can't say that with nearly enough conviction to tell you to not bet Columbia. I'm just saying, like, at 2.5, or even if it made it to 3, I would lean with the Stags here in their home gym. Okay, let's move on. I knew people were going to ask about the early games. I know Brian and I off air were like, man, well, we've got a lot of opinions on the early games today. So that, I guess, is good for the live viewers, bad for the people that are going to watch this show later. But hey, it's feast week. They're going to throw all these games at us, tipping off 11, 12, 1 o'clock. Got to be watching live. Jason Jones is watching live. Appreciate you, Jason.
Thank you to everyone watching live. Best way to do it.
Thank you to everyone watching live. Yep. Happy Thanksgiving. A couple people said that. Yeah, hope everyone's getting geared up for a great, safe, enjoyable holiday weekend. And Toledo is playing today. I bet them pretty much every game that they've played since Brian Power and I got to go to Savage Arena on opening weekend of the season. I haven't bet them yet today, and I'm going to kind of explain why I don't think I will bet this game. So I'll start this one off, and then I'll let you fill in the blanks here. So I was texting with our third co-host, Rob Vino, who is stuck with family, doing family things right now, and traveling, which is why he's not on the show today. But Toledo plays Belmont in an MTE. And so Rob is our sort of resident Belmont Bruins expert. He had one of his kids went there. And so as soon as I saw Toledo Belmont, I said, well, got to text Rob and talk to him about this game. Brian, when we went to the game, I kind of made the decision that, like, when Toledo sees zone, yes, I'm going to look to fade them. When they get a matchup where they're seeing some man-to-man, I'm going to look to back them. Belmont plays almost exclusively man-to-man, but I think this number is much lower than I expected it to be. So that's what put me off of betting this game. I make Belmont like I have the number here somewhere. I think I was way off market on my number. I think I was Belmont like -8.5 or 9 on a neutral against Toledo. Because again, my general thing with Toledo is I think that this is probably one of the lesser teams, and you can speak to that just being a MAC guy. I think this is one of Toledo's lesser teams in recent years, but Belmont's going to almost exclusively man them. And this is like one of those ones where, okay, MTE, Fort Myers, Florida, I think it might be a favorable matchup for Toledo, but that number is way lower than anything I would consider betting Toledo at. So that kind of took me out of this game. Tell me if you've got anything to add, Toledo Belmont.
Not really. I'm actually right on market where it's at. So I was kind of cool. I just scratched this game off. I knew I was interested to hear what you did because I know you're very focused in on this Toledo team and the opposing defensive matchups. I was interested what you would have to say there, but no, this isn't. I'll be pretty blunt. I don't have anything on this game.
Where do you have Toledo though in general? Like, do you have them further down than you have had in recent years? I think this is the lowest I've had Toledo rated in a long time. All
right. So, I mean, relative to the MAC, let's take a look at the MAC here where they're still, coming into the year, because they finished 5th last year, if memory serves me correct. Akron is clearly, by the way, I can't believe Akron didn't win that game on Monday against Yale, but so Toledo, I've got Toledo 5th in the MAC right now, behind BG, Miami, Ohio, Kent, and then obviously Akron would be by far the number 1 team right now in the conference.
Yeah, I think I have them like 6th or 7th. I haven't updated just my specific MAC ratings in a little bit.
And the issue with Toledo continues to be the defensive side of the defensive end of the floor. It's been a problem now for several years, and they're not getting better. Ken Palm's got them down right around number 300 in adjusted efficiency. That's horrible.
Yep. Yeah, and this comment in the chat, he says Belmont's to play. Well, that would be what you would be betting on. Toledo's going to have a hard time getting stops, in my opinion, against Belmont. This is still a very quality offensive team that I think will be able to exploit those weaknesses that you just pointed out. So not sure I have any interest in getting involved with a total that's like 160s in this game. But if you think Belmont's gonna execute their offense the way that they are capable of, then I think you have to like the Belmont side. Makes it a tricky handicap. Go ahead.
Team shooting 60% inside the arc against Toledo this year. That's one of the worst percentages allowed in the entire country.
Yeah, and Belmont runs good offense. They'll get to the rim, they'll get in the paint, and they'll probably score. So again, I just I wish they play. I wish it was a little, but I guess maybe the handicap for me would lend itself to the over because I think Toledo functions better offensively against man. So maybe that's high for a reason. Maybe that total is high for a reason.
Yeah. You want to mention Loyola, our good friends at Loyola Chicago, real quick?
Go take it away.
I just saw it was there. They didn't cover again yesterday. Now, I'll say we're getting to the point where everybody's, the books. People, it was a scramble to downgrade this team as much as possible.
Yes.
You're 0-7 against the number. I'm finally at the point now where there's not a ton of value fading them this afternoon against San Jose State. Although Loyola Chicago just moved to a favorite at DraftKings, and I actually don't agree with that. I still think they should be the underdog here, a slight underdog at the opener when it was at 1.5. When Loyola Chicago was plus 1.5, I didn't see any value. But if people keep just doing, and look, I'm as guilty of doing this sometimes. It's like, oh, they can't keep not covering. I would not bet Loyola Chicago to win this game. I'll say that. I don't think there's as much value in fading them as we saw in some of these earlier games this season. But I wouldn't bet them to win here.
Yeah, well, I guess let's get into this one for a second, because I have some opinion on this as well. So Loyola Chicago is such an outlier that I've had to pretty much cross their games off at this point. The reason for that is like what you're saying. If I were to trust my numbers, it's going to make Loyola Chicago a play pretty much every time. And I got burned by doing that in the Wichita game. And then there was one other where I lost a bet on Loyola Chicago. And that's the thing. They are so clearly not where they were rated coming into the season that if you make your own numbers and power ratings, you're going to show value on Loyola Chicago pretty much every game. But if you have eyeballs, and Brian and I both have 2 of them, So we have 4 combined eyeballs right here that watch a lot of college basketball, and you've watched this team play. You can't possibly think that they're anything close to what their rating is. So like for me, they're one of like 2 teams. I can't remember who the other one is, but I had it marked down. I have 2 teams that I have like a little note that just says skip, because they're so far off of what their rating is that it's me trying to make a number is just gonna mess things. It's gonna put it on my radar, and I'm not gonna, and I don't want to have action on this team. You want to talk about, so San Diego State, I will talk about them first. I'm sorry, San Jose State. The Spartans. This game is in Palm Springs, California, as part of the Acrisure Holiday Invitational. For those keeping track at home to all of these tournaments. San Jose State was one of the teams that I had circled coming into the season that had guys like essentially throwing games last year. They literally had people convicted, or not, I don't know if convicted is the right term, but like found that they were actually doing that. And I think at least two guys that were on that team last year are banned from college basketball, I believe. Like, so we had like 8 teams that had suspicion of it happening. Fresno State and San Jose State both found, and I think New Orleans was another one where they straight up found like, yeah, this was going on. So for me, like in my head, San Jose State's priors from last year were pretty skewed, because it's like, well, if you got dudes that are trying to miss shots to cash tickets, like that's going to ruin your priors. They came out this year. In their first 3 games, and they played 3 what I consider pretty good teams, pretty tough: Utah, Santa Barbara, and then I actually cashed with them against Michigan State. They played a very good second half in that game. Now, they got blitzed by Tulsa yesterday, lost by 30, but that's a Tulsa team that I like. And Brian, these 2 teams actually played in the NIT last year, in the postseason NIT. Loyola Chicago won 73-70. I'm going off memory here. I feel like it was a very competitive game. And if you think they're taking anything from that game, well, that Loyola Chicago team last year was better than this one. And San Jose State was at the end of a season where they literally had people throwing games. So I lean towards San Jose State. I just don't know if I have the fortitude, if you will, to go against Loyola Chicago and then have this be the spot where they decide to win a game.
Yeah, and the thing, what really speaks poorly to Loyola is it's not that they're not covering. It's like how bad they're missing the number by. I mean, they lose yesterday as a 6. You would have thought, okay, they're getting more than 2 possessions. It was the most points they'd gotten in any game all year so far, 6.5 against Northern Iowa. They lose by 21. Of course, the game before that was the complete disaster. I was fortunate enough to give out Northern Illinois on the show last week as a 13.5-point dog. They win outright at Loyola. They're a 4-point dog, Loyola, against Colorado State. They lose by 13. They're a 5.5-point dog against Wichita, lose by 21. They were a 1-point favorite against North Texas, lost by 2. That was where they came the closest to the odds makers. I mean, they lost to Mercyhurst College as a 21.5-point favorite, and then they only beat a terrible Cleveland State team by 3 as a 17.5-point favorite. So it's really hard, I think, guys. I know, there's such a tendency to catch the falling knife or catch the falling pen there. I'm glad I didn't drop that. Trigg, you missed that. I'm kind of upset. But I don't know if this is it. At some point, there will be a clear buy low spot, but I don't know if it's it here.
All right. I want to go to Deuce Bigelow in the chat. He says New Hampshire and Brown. And since I showed up in the Brown sweatshirt today, Brown Bears, we should talk about this game. Also, there's a pretty significant line move in process, which I want to address. And I also have a pretty strong opinion on this Brown team. And I guess you can decide what you want to do with it or not. Don't worry. We are going to lock in some plays, and we will do the same thing for the parlay that we did yesterday. But we're trying to hit the games you want to talk about. So Brown opened -3. And I considered it on the open. And now that places are up to 6, I do kind of wish I took Brown -3. With that being said, I think it's probably personnel related. So I follow, this is just a team that I happen to follow closely. Coming into this season, I was pretty down on Brown. They no Marquino Lilly. I just don't think that they're going to be close to what they've been in years past. So coming into the year, they opened the season with I think Siena played them like the second night or their second game. I forget who they opened with, but the point is, I was looking to play against this Brown team because in addition to that, they were missing a couple of their best players. Now, I think the reason for this jump in the line might be Alex Lesbert might be back today, but even if he's not, they recently got back 2 starters, I think, within their last couple games. Landon Lewis returned. He was the big one. He's probably their best player. And David Rochester was another one that was projected starter that came back. They both played the last 2 games. Brown looked a lot better with those 2 guys on the floor over the weekend against Maine. So New Hampshire is a similar team to Maine. You would think that like Brown probably fares similar. It's a game that they probably should win. Now, you throw the wrinkle of like it's an early tip. It's in New Hampshire, so it's a home game for New Hampshire. A road game, like could New Hampshire hang around? Yeah, I guess so. If Alex Lespert's back, that would be his first appearance for Brown this year. Then I'd really like them in this spot because it would be the best team that they've put on the floor. But like for me, the conundrum was, well, I don't think the player personnel things are priced in for Brown, but I still don't think this team is going to be close to what they've been the last couple of years. And I don't think they're very good. It's ultimately what held me off from playing Brown -3. Though now where the market is, I kind of wish I did. To answer Deuce's question, no, I wouldn't punch back here. I think Brown is the right side. I think you just missed the good number at this point.
I don't have much on this game. I'll just say, remember when Rob Schneider and paid off people to write positive reviews about the movie Deuce Bigalow? That was a sad time.
Okay, I gotta cut you off for a second. KT, because this was the guy that asked for the timestamp. Listen, we're not doing live timestamps. I don't know what kind of production you think we have here. Like, I'm literally producing the show on the fly, and we are adding the timestamps at the end. So until I have a much larger production budget, you're going to have to wait.
What game do you want to know about, KT? I have it written down. We did an intro at 0 to open. At 2:30, we went to Iowa State Cuse. 11:42, we went to Michigan Gonzaga. 17:56, Columbia Fairfield. 22:50, Belmont Toledo. 28 minutes, San Jose State Loyola Chicago. 33:56, we did New Hampshire-Brown.
Jersey, hold on. You got, first of all, they had timestamps in baseball. We did the same thing in baseball. We stamped them after the show. They will be in there after the show. We've gotten the timestamps in after the show every single time. So they will be on the replay. But you got to give us more than like 1 minute. And certainly they're not going to be in while we're doing the show live. So apologies. But they will be in there. Brian just gave him out on the show. That's the first thing we've given out actionable on the show. It's the timestamps. So we're going to get to some plays. You know what? I'm going to get to a play. Garth asked about a game, and I've got a bet in this one. So I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, Brian, to see if you've got your leg of the parlay, because I want to give something actionable and start to build the 3-teamer. But for Garth, he says thoughts on FDU Army, another fade Army spot. Yeah, that is for very, very similar reasons. The one thing I won yesterday on what was a very bad day for me was East Texas A&M absolutely destroying Army. I gave it out here on the show. It ended up being a client play for me, and they absolutely crushed Army on Fairleigh Dickinson's court. So now, as part of this MTE in Hackensack, New Jersey, Brian, that's where Fairleigh Dickinson is. Part of the MTE, Army will now play Fairleigh Dickinson in what is a home game for Fairleigh Dickinson. So I bet this is a 3% play for clients. It opened -1.5, but most places by the time they had this up was like -2.5. So that's, I waited until at least like all of like the MGMs, FanDuels, DraftKings had this up and played -2.5. But I did put in there that this would probably move. And I also put in that you could play the money line and just like lay a little bit more juice if you didn't want to take like 3.5 or 4 when I had -2.5. So I see the market is at 3.5 right now, Brian. What I'm going to do for my leg of the parlay, and so if you didn't see what we did yesterday, we're going to go, I do a leg, you do a leg, and then we'll do a consensus leg to build the 3-teamer, one we agree on. For my leg of the parlay, I'm just going to put in Fairleigh Dickinson on the money line, whatever that is. We'll figure it out by the end of the show. And I will let you know, Garth, that this is a client play for me. I laid 2.5 with Fairleigh Dickinson. Army is just, for me, they're a bottom 10 team in college basketball, and they weren't competitive with East Texas A&M. I don't see how they turn around and fare any better against Fairleigh Dickinson, who will be on their home floor here. I don't know how many people are showing up to a Hackensack MTE with like Fairleigh Dickinson, Army, East Texas A&M, and whoever else is there. I forget. But it is a Fairleigh Dickinson home game, and they'll at least have their own fans. So I do give them a little bit of a bump for playing at home. We've briefly lost Brian Power. We'll get him back. But I do give him a little bit of a bump for playing at home. And that bump has my number here. I think I made it like 6.5, Fairleigh Dickinson. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're taking money and it's moving. And I think that is a very strong look on the early slate today. So Fairleigh Dickinson money line will be the first leg of our parlay. And Doug, thank you. I'm going to use, Doug says -1.5 on the money line. Or I'm sorry, -175. Listen, if you have a 3.5 and you can get 3 for -120 or less, like that's fine for a straight bet. If you don't want to lay like that juiced up -1.5, but or I'm sorry, that juiced up -3. But for the parlay, it's going to be -1.5, or I'm sorry, it's going to be -175. Excuse me. So first leg of the parlay, -175. Brian Power has lost power. He just texted me. He said, my power just went out. It does not get more ironic than Brian Power losing power. But that's what's happened. So we're going to power through. We've got 18 minutes left. I've got power. So let's talk some more games. 18 minutes left. That being said, I don't know if I'm going to do a 3-teamer on my own. So because Brian is still getting text service, I will get his parlay leg, and I'll just try to explain it. But again, first leg of the parlay is Fairleigh Dickinson -175. And I guess what, because of this, I'm just going to give you my other early client play. So I will give you the other thing I've played so far for clients. And let me just navigate to the right part of the odds screen. And we'll put those in as the first 2 legs of the parlay, because I did play another early game. And so that's going to be Appalachian State against Mercer. Let me just navigate to the board, see if this has moved at all. I think even if this is moved, we'll probably still play it in the parlay. So yes, it's down to, you can still get 6.5 on App State here. If actually there's still 7s out there. For the parlay, I'll put 6.5. But there are still 7. So I played Appalachian State +7. And this will be leg number 2 of the parlay. This is also a 3% client play for yours truly. So another one of my paid plays will be leg number 2 of the parlay. Pretty much it's a numbers play, but also I think this was a line I didn't fully understand. So I have this closer to, like, if these 2 teams were to play on a neutral, I would have Mercer -1. This is another just traditional game. It's not part of an MTE. It's a home game for Mercer. I highly doubt Macon. Is it Macon, Georgia? Or Macon? Someone will have to tell me how to pronounce that city. But that's where Mercer is located. I don't think you're going to get some sort of crazy lively atmosphere there for this game, to the point where I would give them like full marks for being at home here. So just based on that, and the fact that Appalachian State in their last game got absolutely embarrassed at home by Elon, just completely destroyed, weren't ready to play. It wasn't like anyone was out. It was just straight up, they did not come ready to play. they got ran out of their own building. This is an App State team that I don't have as highly rated as I've had in past years. I don't think this team is as good as their last couple, but like they're still a capable Sun Belt team. They should not be getting 7 points against Mercer, in my opinion. So, in the chat, Macon like bacon. Okay, Macon, Georgia. I had to take App State +7 here. Just way too much of a difference between where I have the number and where this number is to not play it with two teams that I think, for all intents and purposes, are very equal. Mercer comes out of the SoCon. I think App State's league is a little bit better. Again, I know there's some folks high on Mercer this year, higher than they've been in past years, which I think is maybe the reason that the line is what it is. But I also think that performance against Elon for App State is very much in play here. And I disagree with like that one game being like the determining factor as to where you would rate App State. So the second leg of our parlay will be another client play for me, and that's Appalachian State +7. So we have 2 legs of the parlay locked in. And Brian Power is texting me. So let's go and let's give his leg out. He's going to go to one of the bigger games. So we're going to navigate toward Kansas, Tennessee for Brian Power's parlay leg. And then I see you UC San Diego, folks. We'll go to that game next because I do have an opinion there. But for Brian, I'm just going to give his leg of the parlay out right now. And I just want to make sure that I've got this number correct. So let's go back to the players era. This is another game that I have to be honest, like I don't personally have a huge opinion on a lot of these players era games. And the reason for that is just the nature of 3 games in 3 days, just learning your opponent. And it's just so unnatural to me, like the way that this is set up, that I don't know that I'll have any action in any of these unless something is just like so sets up so nicely that I'm like, hey, I've got to like play it anyway. Trevor agrees with Brian Power. So Brian Power's play is the under. Third game in 3 days and 2 defensive-oriented teams. Kansas won't have the down low success today. Yeah. Well, that's the way Brian Power is looking here. He's going with the under. It's currently 139, 138.5, 139. I'm going to give him 139, and I'll give him 139, and I'll just attach a -120 to it for the parlay. Because that way, if you do have the 139, then you just take it. Otherwise, just move it a half point in your favor. I'm sure 138.5 is fine. He didn't write me his handicap, but again, if that's the way you're looking at it, I mean, it certainly makes sense. 2 defensive-oriented teams, third game in 3 days, Kansas missing one of their best players. I'm also not like fully sold on Tennessee on the offensive floor just yet, or on the offensive end of the floor just yet. So that will be the play. And that's going to be the 3-teamer. We're going to go Kansas, Tennessee under 139. And I will recap that at the end of the show. And also, I will calculate the parlay odds because we, of course, have a money line in there. So I'll do that at the end of the show. Boss Gordon. Let's go to Boss Gordon in the chat for a second. How do y'all listen to Trigg? He's always wrong. I don't know. I'm winning in football right now. And an okay baseball season. Baseball season was fine. Feel like I kind of broke out like close to even. College basketball, first couple weeks, I'm negative. After the last couple days, I did go 5-1 on Monday. It's mid-November. And so I'll talk. Always wrong is harsh. I would say I'm probably have been right about 50% of the time thus far. Hoping to get that up to 55, 56%. That's the goal. You get to 55, 56%. That's about as right as you can get doing this. I will say this, though, like I've structured bets accordingly. Like almost all my plays have been 3% plays with a 4%er sprinkled in here and there. Later in the season, that'll probably be more 4 and 5%. So I did sort of like bake in playing a little bit smaller earlier, because even though I'm showing edges here and there and like good ones, I just think that you really have to take like what you see in the early going with a grain of salt, because of, and that's just the nature of college basketball at this point. New teams, new rosters, MTE stuff. Like it's so very hard to handicap. Handicapping motivation in November for teams, especially for these big teams, these big power conference teams, that the way college basketball is now built gives them so many chances to make up for losing a November game. So that makes it challenging. So again, it's very, very challenging. Adam says, why do you waste time responding to those idiots? Could have hit another game. Yeah, but I also have no co-host right now, so I just felt like it. So now it's really my show. Except Brian Power is back. He's back on the grid. Brian, I gave out your parlay league. Do you want to shed some light now that you have light?
Yeah.
On a Kansas Tennessee for us.
Yeah, glad that we don't have to, rub two sticks together and whatever. I don't know. That was weird, man. I'm just sitting there watching the show, and I just went dark behind me, and then next thing I knew, it was dark all in the room. So let me see if I can grab my notes back up. I should be able to, if you guys can just bear with me. That was really embarrassing and a new low, quite frankly, for yours truly, but which is... All right, we're back. All right, let's talk Kansas, Tennessee, third place game in this Players Era event. Both teams 2-0 in Vegas, but they just didn't have the point differentials that Michigan and Gonzaga did, obviously. Nevertheless, I think Tennessee beating Houston last night, pretty darn impressive, Trigg. Monday, I remember talking about there being a world where there might be some decent value on the Vols in that matchup, provided they didn't blow out Rutgers. Of course, they did blow out Rutgers, so I didn't play it yesterday. Turns out, though, points were not needed for Rick Barnes' team. Still undefeated, by the way, 7-0 straight up. Meanwhile, what sticks out to me about Kansas, guys, isn't necessarily just the two losses, which were to Duke and North Carolina, but the fact their last 5 games have all stayed under the total. And in the 2 games here in Vegas, the Jayhawks have allowed just 0.92 points per possession. They now have a top 10 defensive rating over at KenPom. Of course, so does Tennessee, who has a much better offensive rating. Peterson still being out for Kansas is a big deal. But the real key for tonight is, can Kansas do what really no Tennessee opponent has done thus far, and that's limit the Vols on the offensive glass? I mean, a 48.2 offensive rebound percentage isn't just number 1 in the country. It's just pretty ridiculous when you break it down. The Vols have size. We know this. 3 starters, 6'10" or taller. So offensive rebounding is going to be a big strength for them all season. There's going to be second chance opportunities. I realize that doesn't sound great when I'm talking about betting an under here, but Tennessee is going to force their opponents to shoot threes defensively. And that's a problem for Kansas because they're only making 32% from behind the arc. I think this is probably an under game because whichever team loses, Trigg, is going to have a bad shooting night. And what happened to Trigg? Well, that was fun as I broke that one down, guys. Hopefully, what an incredible program this has been so far. What a program this has been.
I swear that was unplanned. But I wonder, so we only live like 5 hours apart in like in the same part of the country. That my power just blinked, but it only like went out very briefly.
It did, but it totally screwed me over. That was the same thing as mine. Yeah.
Are you getting weather right now? Like,
yes.
Is it raining? Yeah. It's windy and raining here as well.
Yes, so, we're supposed to get snow later today. So I think this may be weather related here.
Yeah, we are supposed to get like, I guess, a lot of snow tomorrow. So it must be just coming down I-90. So that's like Brian and I live on the same road, basically, just literally 5 hours apart. Interstate 90, Central New York, Interstate 90, middle of Ohio. And but I am back. So I'm assuming that you finished your breakdown. Can we?
And then I came back and I had all my notes and I said, well, what do you got to say about that, Trigg? And you weren't there, and I really didn't know what to do. And I said, how about I didn't know if I had been kicked out again. I didn't know what was going to go on.
Hey, listen, we fight, we battle through it. We're back on here. We have I just took the liberty of putting both of my early client plays in the 3-teamer. So we've got the parlay locked in. We do have a few minutes left here. I want to talk. So the chat has been clamoring for UC San Diego Towson chatter. And so let's talk about this game. So I told you I had another team that I think I was pretty far off market on. This one would be in the other direction. And that's UC San Diego. And after yesterday, so I did bet Bradley yesterday. And that was one of those ones where, like, early on, I kind of regret, like, once I got to watch the flow of the game a little bit, I regretted that a lot. Like, I was like, I had buyer's remorse because I was like, oh shit, like this is like, I've got the wrong side. It was one of those where I was like, I'm on the wrong side. UC San Diego just looks better. And of course they were better. So some of you might know Jordan Alexander, who is, he does a lot of content here. We'll probably get him on for a guest spot at some point. But the reason I bring him up is late last night, him and I were talking about the game, talking about UC San Diego, and he is tuned in as anyone to that conference and those teams. He lives out. I think he's in Vegas now, but he's from the I think California area somewhere. He texted me this. He said, UC San Diego is going to be a wagon again, man. He said, books are flustered. They don't know how to price them with a new head coach and an entire new roster. But Clint Allard was the brains behind the operation. This team is really good, and no one has them ranked appropriately. And so I bring him up because last year he was the first person. He was the driver of the UC San Diego bandwagon that everyone hopped on. He was the first person that talked about them, to my knowledge. That was like, this team is so good. And then of course by March, my mom was like, "Oh, UC San Diego." Yeah. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Like, you know.
And then of course, what happens? They played the worst first half of the season they have, and then just missed out on covering the number by half a point against Michigan.
Yeah, so that's
in a matchup that was tailor-made for them from a turnover perspective.
So what he's saying, and what is totally sort of taken that team, that's the other one I've thrown out now, where it's like my rating is probably going to show value to fade them, and I've just straight up decided that I am not playing against UC San Diego at this point.
Covered every game
because I trust Jordan's opinion on that team. That's a team that he follows that team the way I follow like Brown or Siena or like one of those. So it's like, if he's telling me that they could essentially follow the same trajectory as they did last year, which they already pretty much have. Something I will tell you about Towson. We talked about Towson with Matt Winnick yesterday, and he pointed out that, you know, they're gonna defend the paint. They also have real issues scoring. I think I noted that they're outside the top 300 in scoring this year. But like UC San Diego, in a lot of cases, can just shoot over you. So it's like that, you know, and you talk about UC San Diego's just their surface numbers, 22nd nationally field goal percentage. That looks a lot like last year. 35th nationally 3-point percentage. That looks a lot like last year. You won't catch me betting against the Tritons anytime soon. So it has to be UC San Diego or pass.
Yeah, and I think the other question you have to ask is, Towson going to pull 3 upsets in 3 days? I mean, it's not impressive. Yeah. Teams have done it before, but it's a tall order. Usually the odds makers aren't wrong like that 3 days in a row with the same team.
And to note, just to also mention, like, Towson's very good. Like, Towson has 2 guys back, Williamson and Tejada, that were 2 of the better players in that conference last season. They have a tremendous coach. They're excellent defensively. They can rebound. Like, they have so many redeeming qualities. They're not really a team I want to fade. But I'm here. Like, if you pinned me down for a play in this game, I just don't think I would go against UC San Diego. That's about it. Sean, yeah, we'll go a couple, but because we had a little power outage, they may cut the Twitter stream. So if you get cut off on Twitter, I don't know if there's anyone after us today, but if you get cut off on Twitter,
I have a little bit. So how about we do this? We can recap the parlay because I think we've got a lot. We've got a lot of recapping, and I can go through St. John's Auburn real quick before we recap the parlay. Get out of here.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to go to Brian Power. He's going to close it down. St. John's, Auburn, and then Jay Buff in at the gun with one of the more obnoxious hellos I've ever seen in the chat. This is going to take up the whole screen. Jay Buff, we already did Syracuse at the top of the show for you. So head on over to the WagerTalk YouTube channel if you've missed the show. And you
talked
can
about how great you were.
Yeah, you can watch the replay. Yes, and also while you're over there, like and subscribe. And guess what? While you're over there in like an hour, there's going to be timestamps. Believe it or not, there will be timestamps.
Yes.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Let me blow through St. John's Auburn. I'm going to go out on a limb, Trigg, and say Auburn's going to play a lot better here than they did last night in the 30-point loss to Michigan. We talked about that Auburn-Michigan game a little bit at the top. We were breaking down Michigan-Gonzaga. Tigers, they shot just 35.5% overall, out-rebounded 51-35, outscored on the fast break 29-3. Keyshawn Hall had an off night, season low 15. He'd scored 20 or more each of the team's first 4 games. Meanwhile, good bounce back last night for the Johnnies after they opened this event with the 1-point loss to Iowa State. Rick Pitino's team beats previously undefeated Baylor by 15 last night. Sellers continues to shoot the three well. He's had made 5 threes each of the last 2 days. That's why Pitino went to the portal, grabbed them from Stanford. Speaking of transfers, you got Bryce Hopkins, of course, come over from Providence. He had 26 last night. He was perfect from 3. Yes, St. John's deserves to be favored by a couple possessions here, Trigg. But my concern is whether or not there will be any kind of offensive regression for them following a game where they shoot 57% overall from the floor, including 11 of 22 from 3. This is not a high-volume team from 3. So last night's performance from behind the arc feels like a bit of an anomaly. Then again, Auburn, a disappointing 81st in adjusted defensive efficiency per Ken Palm. We know St. John's wants to play fast. They're a top 25 team in adjusted tempo. But one thing that sticks out to me with this Auburn team, they don't turn the ball over. I think, I don't know. I would take the points or do nothing here in this one just because I don't think St. John's is playing as well as they did last night, and I think Auburn can only improve.
John Wood says, thanks, guys. Your free client plays have made him a lot of money. I appreciate that. That's all we're trying to do.
Yes.
We're just trying to share. Like, that's what we're trying to do on this show. Share good info and help you go at a market that has 364 teams. So and any info we can share in this hour, we try to do so. If you want what we're betting on, which I think over the course of the year will be pretty good. November's probably the toughest month at this point. We have those at WagerTalk. And because Brian Power lost power, you got mine here this morning. Yeah, it's just Brian now. No more power.
Yes. Yeah.
You got my early client plays here. So I've locked in 2 plays so far. I took the Liberty BP because your power went out. We were going to do a consensus leg like Matt Winnick and I did yesterday as the third leg. But I just took the liberty of giving 2 plays. So because we've already done it, I got to say this too, because people want, yes, the parlay lost yesterday once again on the third leg. We hit the first 2. We lost it on the third leg. And so after our hot start, so the first week of the year, we had 15.22 units. We are now down to just 3.22 units in the bank. But we're still in the plus. And again, you don't have to parlay them. You can play them all straight. You're probably doing better if you play them all straight. But at the same time, it's like this is the ebbs and flows of parlay betting. Like you might go 2 weeks without hitting one. You might hit a couple back to back. That's what happened to us during the baseball season, where we'd get up to 15 units, get back down to 0. We'd hit one. I think we finished the year, 6 months of firing parlays, up 5 units on parlays. So better than negative. Let's put it that way. So for the people out there that are always record keeping, every dollar, if you were to play these all equally, every dollar equally, like $1 would equal $3.22, or what we'll call, to make it more simple for the show, 3.22 units.
Mm-hmm.
Today's parlay, Fairleigh Dickinson on the money line, that's minus 175. Appalachian State plus 6.5. I will point out that Appalachian State plus 7 and Fairleigh Dickinson minus 2.5 are both 3% client plays for yours truly. And then Brian Power is going Kansas, Tennessee. Do you see a number on that right now?
138.5.
138.5. So we'll go Kansas, Tennessee under 138.5 plus 450 is what that comes out to. And I threw in a minus 120 there in case, one of those was off. So plus 450, that's Fairleigh Dickinson money line. App State plus 6.5. Kansas, Tennessee under 139.5. Little bit of power blinking here and there. Not going to stop us. We made it through the show. Hope everyone if you're traveling today, be safe, especially if you're traveling by where Brian and I live, because it doesn't look great out there right now. We'll be here tomorrow. Well, I will be. Matt Winnick is back filling in tomorrow. So we'll say happy Thanksgiving to BP. And we'll see you guys back here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Thanksgiving edition of Full Court Press. We'll see you then, everyone.
Gobble, gobble.